Right, so another blazing resignation from Keir Starmer's Labour Party in disgust. Another councillor, in fact, this time on Cheshire East Council. But this particular councillor is a lot better known than most, especially to those of us on the left, those of us who were on the left of the Labour Party once upon a time, the Socialists amongst us. Because this particular councillor also happens to be a former MP, the MP for Crewe and Nantwich, no less, as she was, Laura Smith. She's been suspended by the party for breaking the Labour Party whip on that council. She refused to vote through a Toryesque austerity budget that Labour were trying to drive through that council. The Tories and Labour on the same page? Well, colour me surprised. Smith has said she's no hypocrite and she's given her party both barrels for this suspension and an excoriating resignation letter that has followed. Right, so Laura Smith is not mucking about. Her resignation letter is every bit as eloquent as it is utterly damning of what has become of the Labour Party. Cheshire East Labour seemingly typical of the new Starmeroid vision of veering right with a significant authoritarian streak down the middle for anyone daring to have opposing opinions or stepping out of line. Having been suspended for breaking the Labour Party whip on what was an austerity budget being put forward by Labour, Cheshire East Council being a no overall control party but led by a Labour and independent councillor coalition, despite the Tories actually being the largest party. But with this Labour-led coalition pushing through an austerity budget, it's like the Tories, who were dumped out of control of the council when these seats were last contested in 2019, never left. Smith has had none of it, as you can imagine, and won't be a hypocrite about it either, she says. Her resignation letter, made public earlier today, reads, I entered mainstream politics back in 2017 after years of activism in social justice movements, after growing up in a family of trade union and socialist values. I stuffed leaflets in the Labour Party envelopes and served tea and biscuits at the meetings of the local group as a child, and some of my earliest memories are of Saturdays spent in the car with my dad as he drove Gwyneth Dunwoody, the MP at the time, around the constituency. I knew my core values from a very early age, and I knew from the feeling in the pit of my stomach that my fight was always going to be equality and social justice. I experienced many things growing up that further shaped my beliefs, and that feeling only grew as I became an adult. Being supported by my local Labour Party and then becoming an MP representing my hometown was something that I couldn't ever have imagined. As someone from a challenging background and always struggling to make ends meet, it wasn't a future I felt was possible. But it did happen in a whirlwind of political change and hope for an alternative in the snap general election of 2017. I was elevated into a position where I felt that I could make a difference, and my motivation was always the same. Those same values that I had harboured since being a little girl. That 2.5 years in Parliament was an experience that I will always cherish and struggle with in equal measures. The stark reality of our political system is one that I cannot pretend hasn't made me more cynical, less hopeful for a real alternative, and unfortunately more worried for the future. When I was elected, I hoped that I could prove to young girls and women who had been just like me that their voices could be heard, that they could make a difference, and that they could be the change makers and creators of a better world. The sad reality is that the system itself hampers the opportunity for real progress. I would love to say that politics is a safe space for women. It isn't. I would desperately like to say that debate and conflict is healthy and respectful. It's not. I wish I could say the old tropes that politics is a dirty, corrupt business were untrue, but sadly it is. And that is from the top of our politics all the way down to local politics. More than anything, I would like to say that the Labour Party itself sets the standard of inclusivity and respect, but that would be untruthful in my experience. It has become a place where to have a thought in your head that differs to the Labour leadership and the officials behind the scenes is an offence that can lead to suspension or even expulsion. At a local level, it is a space where judgment is felt because as a full-time working mother, juggling multiple caring responsibilities as well as often working Saturdays, you can't sit in meeting after meeting or knock on doors in your rare free hours. I have heard the tutting and watched the finger wagging and listened to the comments, and I think it unfortunately remains the case that to be valued in the party that you need lots and lots of free time. Naturally, that means being either retired, not having caring responsibilities, being healthy both physically and mentally, and more often than not financially secure. Equality, right? This is before even touching on the factional aspects that rage through the party, manifesting itself through bullying, belittling, a culture of fear, and a general lack of respect. I am not perfect. I don't have all the answers. But one thing I am not is a hypocrite. It is for that reason, and after much consideration, I have decided to resign my membership of the UK Labour Party rather than appeal my recent suspension letter by the local Labour group at Cheshire East Council. I was suspended for not voting in line with the whip, but as I stated at the council meeting on the 27th of February, I cannot support an austerity budget that places local councillors as the punching bag for a Tory government determined to destroy public services. This has not been an easy decision, but it is on balance the right one for me. The reasons I have stated, combined with the position of the Labour Party leadership is taking on in international policy as well as domestic issues, is now completely at odds with my personal beliefs, and unfortunately I feel that an alternative voice is no longer respected within party structures. I would like to thank the great many friends that I have within the party who I hope will continue to value and respect me as I value and respect them. I will continue to serve my ward of Crewe South as an independent socialist councillor on the political values that I have always openly and honestly shared and was elected on. I remain dedicated to fighting for true equality and justice for the people in this country who are quite simply not receiving anywhere near the service and quality of life that they deserve. There is a complete void of honesty, decency, ambition and leadership from those with the true power to change things. Talk is cheap, and the dishonesty that I have encountered on a daily basis in politics is something that I simply could not have imagined. Bravery is required in desperate times, and democracy can only really work when fear and desire for power is not the only driving force behind people's motivations. It is our actions that define who we are, and we owe it to ourselves to be true. I will be true to the little girl I once was, and not allow my voice to be erased and my opinions silenced. Laura Smith is somebody who I believe has got Labour running through her like a stick of rock. Labour values, though, not Labour Party. And the party no longer share those values, the values she was brought up with and which drive her every day. And so being a part of a party that has had such a significant role in shaping her as she grew up is not something she can be a part of any longer. Because functionally it isn't Labour any longer. It's a pro-austerity Tory B team. And I can only imagine how difficult it has been for Laura Smith to detach herself from that. But goodness knows she's had plenty of support online. Another former Labour MP, Thelma Walker, tweeted to her that it was about time that she left and offered her solidarity. And Chris Williamson, now of George Galloway's Workers' Party, acknowledged Smith's resignation by recalling her as being one of the few who stood by him when he was suspended. I'd love to see her run again. She proved what a great asset to the Labour Party and the movement she was as a parliamentarian. But equally, when she talks of having caring responsibilities, juggling work, that the business of politics does happen to suit those with more time and more financial security. It doesn't suit the needs of ordinary working class people such as ourselves and Laura Smith. Yet where we need more Laura Smiths, because of these situations, because of these circumstances, we end up getting more Tory types instead, and our politics is skewed as a result of that. The system, as she put it, doesn't work for most people, either being on the receiving end of it or trying to change things from within. I hope she continues in politics, certainly at a local level, and as much as people are saying to her to run as an independent now, as so many others are now around the country, and how exciting it would be if she chose to do that, it almost feels unfair to ask even more of her. And as much as I'd love to see her back in Parliament, especially free of the shackles of the Labour whip, perhaps let her inspire you to have a go instead. The little girl from the challenging background, as Laura Smith described herself, proved she could do it. So why can't any of us, in which case? Especially when Keir Starmer drives Labour in a direction, as Laura Smith states, she cannot support any longer. And goodness knows he proves her point when his plans for economic growth consist of more Toryesque, Thatcherite trickle-down economics, because that's always worked before, hasn't it? His idiocy on this matter is detailed in this video recommendation here, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.